I think all of us have fun when we know that we're growing, even if it's painful. We love growth, even if it is difficult and even if it requires a lot of failure and painful feedback from our mentors or whatever it is.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Jimini Health podcast. I'm Mark Jacobstein, the co-founder and president of Jimini Health. In our conversations, we explore the frontiers of AI, mental and behavioral health, and any interesting ancillary topics. Today, we're going to be talking to Jon Tippens, who I'm really honored to have with us. And Jon is going to be sharing some of his journey as a patient. So he is the first patient of Jimini's who has volunteered to share his experience publicly. And we're really excited to have that conversation. We're obviously proud of what we've built, but we know that we have a lot further to go. And so let me just start by saying thank you to Jon. And then, Jon, if you don't mind, introduce yourself, tell the world a little bit about who you are and maybe why you decided to come on the podcast today.
Sure. Well, first of all, Mark, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited about what you're building. And as you've already mentioned, I've been a user and a patient for over a year now. And so
Amazing.
That's a testament to my endorsement of both the general direction in this space and also specifically what you're building at Jimini. So thank you. Yeah, in terms of a little bit about me. So you noted up front some of my hobbies. So I'll just start with those. I'm a musician, and that seems apparently to be what comes up about me if you Google me. But for work, I've been a software engineer since about 2016. And I've recently jumped into the world of startups, which I understand you're familiar with.
Indeed. High stress, high growth, or sometimes well, the goal is high growth. Certainly, it's always high stress.
I wish it weren't the case, but you're right. Yeah, it's been a very fun journey professionally. I actually started out in law. So I graduated with my JD from the University of Maryland School of Law. I was working at the Maryland State AG's office for a while, and I started to build websites that would bring legal services online. And to cut a long story short, I started to get offers. People wanted to pay me to continue to do this. And at the time, the legal industry was going through a little bit of shrinking. There was the 2008 financial crisis, and there were fewer entrants into law school than there were when I had started. And so I thought to myself, man, actually, one of my roommates at the time was a software engineer, and I got to peek into his world sometimes, and I thought, well, this is really fun. It's going well, and people are paying me to do this, and I didn't even ask them to. So I ended up moving out to Berkeley, moving out to the West Coast from Maryland, and I got my first job at Walmart Labs as a software engineer. And later I worked.
Probably prescient, given what LLMs seem to be doing to the legal profession and a lot of knowledge work professions, although perhaps software coding as well. We'll see.
Yeah. Only time will tell. So I worked as a software engineer for a slew of companies, most recently at Google. And I recently made the leap back into the startups world, actually, which is what the impetus was for me to become a software engineer in general. It was the work that I was doing, bringing legal services online and building web apps to sort of democratize access or increase access to legal, which was what got me into software in the first place. And here I am back in legal tech. So I'm the co-founder of a legal tech startup, and we're building AI-powered legal drafting tools.
Amazing. Well, good for you, and obviously an extraordinarily interesting space. And I love the mission of democratizing access. This is one of those things where I think if you approach AI with an abundance mentality, it's easy to see the risks and dangers and the scary pieces of people being displaced from work. And I think that's very real, and we need to be conscious of it. I also think, to your point, we're going to bring services to people who've never been able to have them, whether that is on the health side, legal side, name your service. And actually, as an interesting segue, I mean, one of the things that was very important to us at Jimini when we were putting the company together was democratizing access to mental health and behavioral health services. We have a crisis in this country and all over the world where most, maybe all people struggle with, to one degree or another, anxiety, concomitant depression, et cetera, let alone all the serious mental illness we have. And we just don't have enough therapists. Like, there's no way to have enough therapists. In some ways, it's similar probably to you just couldn't have enough lawyers to cover all of the work that human beings might have. And so what that means is people of means or companies of means end up with most of the services. And there's a lot of people who do not.
Yeah, I think that's right. You would know better than I do in terms of trends in the space, but I'm really excited about the possibility that more, perhaps 10x more people can have access to these services that need them than we've ever seen before, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the AI can provide better answers than in the old days. I mean, people used to joke about Dr. Google, right? I'm not sure about this rash. And you go to Google and it'd send you a link and you'd read the article and maybe you'd end up with a good answer. Maybe you wouldn't, and verifiability. And it's by the way, it's not as if LLMs don't hallucinate or don't have their own challenges, but as people build verticalized AI solutions where, no, I've made this thing and it is for solving your challenge. You want to write a will? We will help you write a will, and we have ingested all the knowledge that we need to. We know that you're in California and it should look like this, et cetera. I think it will really change the way people access services and open up services to people. So that's really exciting.
Sure.
Yeah,
for sure. I'm interested that you mentioned the phrase Dr. Google.
Yeah.
It makes me think of some of the first historical, perhaps, glimpses we've had into the promise of the intersection between talk therapy, and natural language processing.
Yeah.
Right. So you might be aware, you might not be, but Joseph Weizenbaum back in the 60s created this thing that he called ELIZA to mimic.
Oh, sure. We know ELIZA. Yeah.
You know ELIZA. Great. I don't know where you first encountered ELIZA. The funny story about my first encounter with ELIZA. So I'm an Emacs user, just not out of necessity, out of idle curiosities every now
that
and
may
then.
be the most personal thing you revealed today.
Yeah. Well, I'll go even deeper. I'm a fan of Vim key bindings, but I use them with Emacs, which I guess is heresy. But I don't have a dog in that fight. But the first place that I encountered ELIZA was apparently that it ships with Emacs, and I stumbled across it early on when I was getting to know my way around Emacs, and I realized that there was this chatbot thing that shipped with Emacs, and I started interacting with it, and then I thought to myself, who built this and why? Right. This was a long time ago.
I mean, it was an amazing science experiment in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
And then we had our trough of disappointment for 30, 40 years. I mean, there was the promise of AI has been around for a long time. I've told this story before, but the last AI class I took was in 1989 with a professor named Barbara Gross, who had been, I think she trained under Marvin Minsky, and she was a reasonably prominent professor at Harvard teaching AI, specifically like NLP stuff using expert systems. And literally the only thing I remembered from that class was like, this will never work. And for 40 years, that was true until it wasn't. And ELIZA was a toy and it was kind of cool. And then people were like, okay, I'm bored. This doesn't actually do anything.
Right.
And nothing's ever going to pass the Turing test. And then it depends on who you are, but you had your, oh shit moment sometime in the last 2-3 years, like, wow, LLMs are going to change everything. And it's been a wild journey to watch.
Well, I agreed, as you're well aware, there was this trough and the promise has been hard to deliver on until now. But one of the things that stuck out to me when I was looking up about ELIZA when I first encountered it using Emacs was there was this anecdote that I read, and it could be apocryphal, but I think the anecdote does say something true about this world. So my understanding is there was an engineer who was working on ELIZA, and there was an assistant. I don't remember if it was a typist or it was definitely an assistant role. And she was playing around with it, and the engineer had showed her. And she felt so free to chat with this thing, so unencumbered to chat with a machine, that she asked him to leave the room. She was like, I'm having too much fun here. You're kind of disturbing me. I need you to leave the room. I want to talk to this thing right now. There was this moment, right? This spark of the ability to share or to think or speak freely with a conversational partner that is a machine, right? Even back in the early days, right? And so, as you said, probably after a few hours of use, she probably realized, oh, okay, this is sort of a gimmick, right? Or there were limits to what she could get out of it.
But I think you're speaking to something really important, which was some sort of combination of latent demand just for like conversational partner.
That's right.
And in certain circumstances, more comfort speaking to something or someone that's not human. Now, it's interesting because, we've made a very explicit decision at Jimini where we're trying to deliver therapy for people who are struggling with anxiety, depression, even more serious mental illness, we always do it in conjunction with the therapist for a lot of reasons. And we think that a therapist should and needs to be sort of overseeing the care and can do a lot of things that a machine cannot do yet. And also therapeutic alliance, which is sort of therapy speak for like, do you like your therapist, turns out to be highly correlated with whether people get better through their PHQ-9 and GAD-7 scores improve. I do think over time, to your point, there will be circumstances in which it is easier to talk to the machine. And it may be, in part, what we've created is this essentially a care team where you have a therapist with whom you have a primary relationship. And then you have Sage, our AI, who is there, all the time, which of course a human being can't be, right? That's an important part of it. But also, it can sort of proactively be reaching out to you. This was a really important part of our care model, is this notion of continuous care where like, well, you're a musician, right? I wouldn't get better at piano or guitar playing 1 hour a week. If I actually want to get better, I need to chip away at it. And that's probably every day and hopefully even multiple times a day. And I think for a lot of things with mental health, the same thing holds. And so when you think about like the paradigm of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which underpins a lot of what many of the sort of successful paradigms in modern therapy rely on CBT or something similar, there's work for the patient, right? Where you have to work at cognitive reframing or restructuring or catching a thought and realizing like, is that actually an accurate representation of the world? Also, it's just a thought. It's something I can let go. It doesn't have to affect my emotions, let alone my behaviors. That takes practice. And so having something that can kind of remind you in real time or several times a day, I think is pretty powerful. But of course, we're still just scratching the surface with this.
Yes.
And, I'm curious actually. So, if you don't mind sharing a little bit of your own experience with that.
Of course.
Since obviously, you mentioned you've been with Jimini for a year. We're a new company. The experience of presumably has changed over the course of the year as we continue to improve Sage and Sage's capabilities and all the while sort of having really careful guardrails, not rolling something out sort of until it's ready. But I'm curious what your experience has been like.
Yeah, happy to share. I was gonna start out and march slowly towards some of the deeper benefits.
But since absolutely, you're however you want to get there.
Well, I'm actually going to go backwards because I want to hold the thought that you just mentioned. So you brought up this really good metaphor of learning to play the piano, right? And this is, I think, a good metaphor for why this model is so promising and very powerful even now, even today. Imagine have you ever had a piano lesson or a music lesson?
I have. I am a deeply amateur drummer and a 3 chords and the truth guitarist.
Great. That's awesome. So imagine if you were at your lesson with your teacher. You've had teachers for any?
Yeah, I had actually my drum instructor. This guy named Jake Woods. I'm going to plug him. He's literally the best instructor I've ever had in anything I've ever learned in my entire life. He's a genius drummer. Absolute genius drummer, but he's even a greater teaching genius, which is, anyways.
Yes,
it's
that's no coincidence. So I have this deeply held belief and opinion that music is a really powerful model for education, and many of the most accomplished musicians and educators that I know in the music space become expert teachers, become expert mentors. They become very good specifically at teaching. Right. And I don't think that's accidental. Music is a practice. We use the word practice in music. We should practice. Music is something you have to learn by doing. You can read music theory books. You can read about guitarists. You can read about drummers. You can buy some of the best Hal Leonard published, practice manuals you can find out there. There's just no substitute, right, for having someone sit with you.
Oh, 4-limb coordination is hard.
Yeah.
But if you do it again and again, there's this very magical feeling, at least for me, of like, I couldn't do this 15 minutes ago, and now I can. And 15 minutes from now, I'm going to be able to do it faster and cleaner. And that's, I don't know any field of things I've tried to learn before where the difference between I didn't know it and I do know it is more clear and in its own way more satisfying because of the clarity. Like you can feel yourself learning with a musical instrument that is, I think it's really profound.
Yeah, it is profound. And imagine for a second that instead of sitting with your drum instructor or your guitar instructor and they watch you play, and they give you live feedback on your playing. They move your hands, or they say, you've got too much muscle tension in your arms, this won't work. They tell you what you're doing wrong with your foot at the bass drum, or they tell you that your posture isn't quite right holding the guitar, whatever it is. Imagine instead of that, they ask you, so how did it go this week? Tell me about that. When you performed at your recital, how did it go? Well, I thought I was doing well until I got to this certain measure, and then the audience didn't really like that part, and I think I made a mistake, blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay, well, let's dig into that. Why do you think you made a mistake? Right? Imagine if that's how every music lesson went, right? Could we make progress? Probably. But I think this model with Jimini Health brings us closer to where we want to be, which is it's a practice.
It's a practice.
And we need to be able to observe ourselves doing the things that we want to get better at with a professional.
I love this, Jon, because honestly, I think you're absolutely right in terms of kind of the way we think about it. I've never heard it articulated this way before, though, and it's so good that I'm going to bring it back into the company. And I think that's exactly right. And we have always thought about this in terms of exercise and work and basically cognitive restructuring, reframing, all the various techniques that you learn in CBT. To your point, you can read about them in a book. There are no shortage of books about CBT or DBT or any of the EBTs. Reading the book is vaguely useful, but not really. What you actually have to do is practice.
That's right.
And that is at the heart of what we're trying to do. Now, there's all sorts of nuances to that because, of course, and part of why Jake was such a fantastic drum instructor was it was always fun, right? Even though it's hard work, it was fun. And there was always just the right level of this is hard, but it's not so hard it's going to break you. And I mean, I literally remember the first time I ever went in to see him. And at the time he was in Hayes Valley, and it was a very, very, very sketchy block, which is the only place you could be, and actually still have a drum studio in San Francisco. And I wander in what's up here? And we sit down and we are no more than 3 minutes into the first lesson. And I've never played drums before. And I'm playing music, and he starts me on some very simple 4/4 time, but it's I think it was Michael Jackson. It was I think it was Beat It, which is it's actually very simple, right? I mean, to play it right is one thing, but it's very simple to all of a sudden be playing music. And I was oh, I love this. And then I'm hooked, right? But then it was always making it just enough harder. And I think that one of the nuances here in a therapeutic environment is for both a therapist and an AI that is working in conjunction with a therapist is also to push you, but not push you so hard you leave, to make it fun and interesting. But also in therapy, some of these things are profoundly hard, and they're not going to be fun. Right. But they need to not be something that drives you away. And I think that's another part of it's good therapists do that sort of intuitively. We need to train an AI to sort of learn how to do that.
Well, I think the fun part is also profound, Mark. So I think all of us have fun when we know that we're growing, even if it's painful. Mm-hmm. And growing as a musician is some of the most fun I've ever had in my life, probably. Knowing, oh my goodness, I couldn't do that yesterday. I can do it today. That's so cool. I mean, it's a performance-based thing. The same is true of sports, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't sink that 3-pointer until now.
Right.
It's just plainly true. You can see it, and you can see your own growth very quickly. And humans, we love that. We love growth, even if it is difficult and even if it requires a lot of failure and painful feedback from our mentors or whatever it is. So when it works, both in the music context and in the therapy context, when it's doing its job and it helps you grow, I think we have fun, even if it's hard along the way.
I think that's right. And then the other thing that we've found is important for developing something like Jimini, this is probably true with music also, or how far we'll extend the metaphor, is that the service fits into your life. So I mean, one of the things I'm very conscious of this in a healthcare context right now, not to share too much information, but I have a Morton's neuroma in my foot. It's a little bit painful. Used to be a required surgery. Now it requires 3 shots at least, maybe 4 through the top of your foot. Anyways, sounds worse than it is. The worst part is not actually the shots. The worst part is finding an hour and a half in my day 4 different times with, the busy life that I have to get this thing taken care of. One of the things that is also critical is that the service works in somebody's life. And I will say one of the challenges with mental and behavioral health and therapy in general is historically, if it's like you sit down with somebody for an hour every single week and it's at a prescribed time, especially before telehealth, but even with telehealth, that was like an affluent knowledge worker's privilege. Like most jobs in the world don't I'm going to take Tuesdays off at 10 o'clock for an hour. Oh, okay, cool. Don't come back next week. Right. And so one of the things that we've also tried to accomplish with Jimini, and I think that having AI as an assistant has made some of this feasible, is to make it easier to fit into people's lives. Less time that is prescribed and more time that is sort of your time and around your schedule, but then also trying to fit into create habit loops that fit into the sort of things that are happening inside your life. I'm not sure what the musical analog to that is. I guess it's like you figure out your practice times. There is no way to make drums work actually easily in someone's life because your neighbor's going to hate you no matter what.
Now you're speaking my language. This is a serious problem. But look, I'd love to fill in the blanks here with my own personal kind of user journey. So there's so much to what you're saying, but let me just take you through how I typically benefit from Jimini as a patient and user. Something will come up in my life that is noteworthy that I would want to bring up with a therapist. It could be a stressful situation. It could be a difficult conversation I need to have with someone. It could be a decision I'm avoiding. Who knows, right? And in the old world, pre-Jimini, I'd have to either pull up a notes document or write something down in a notebook somewhere and hope that I'm capturing it well enough so that I'll remember what I was going through or what I was thinking and bring it up with the therapist. And I have about somewhere between 45 minutes to an hour to do that. Right. And I always had this longing or this dissatisfaction with this. I always thought to myself, it's not landing. I'm not, I'm not, and I'm someone who does have, an interest and is highly motivated in making this, in being able to communicate what happened and what I was thinking and what went wrong. And I still wouldn't succeed all the time.
Well, and it sounds like, honestly, you're far more organized than most people. Like you would actually make a note. I mean, I have similar experience. Somebody, been in and out of therapy for 30 years of I just experienced something. It's very salient. In the moment, I know it's eliciting something really important. And I'm also aware that when I talk to my therapist 5 days from now, I might not even remember it. Yeah. And if I do, I'm going to get it all wrong. And anyways, but unlike you, I didn't used to write it down.
Yeah. Well, I may be organized. I could also be cheap. Because I'm usually paying at least some amount, right, for therapy. It's not 100%
right. You want to maximize the time. Yeah.
I want to maximize the time. I know I've got 45 minutes to try to grow as a person. So go. And slowly I get better at this. I realize, oh goodness, okay. Today I spent 45 minutes sort of backtracking and trying to explain what happened. Let's cut that down to 15 so we can spend the rest, So I don't know what motive, but you get it. So
absolutely.
So with Jimini, I can in the moment not only capture what's going on, but capture it in a way that is conversational. So that's a critical distinction.
Yeah.
Right. Before I would make some bullet points and say, had this conversation, had this thought, had this anxiety, had this worry, had this concern, or used a tone of voice that I regret or something. Who knows? Today, I can actually have a sort of dialogue, right? Yep. That in real time gives my therapist a sense for, oh, okay, I see the pattern here. I see why you're going down this road or down this rabbit hole. Let's talk about this. Let's adjust this, right? So she can sort of, in the musical metaphor here might be she can see a performance, right? And then critique it and say, oh, okay, now I know what you were talking about. Oh, okay. It's better to show than to tell, in other words.
Well, and I actually think, therapy in particular, it's such an artificial milieu when you're talking to your therapist for 45 minutes. The whole point is you sort of been taken away from the real world for that 45 minutes. And your therapist never actually gets to see you in the real world. And this is a much closer I think you're right, and that's been really important to us, is sort of this relationship between Sage and the therapist, and like Sage being able to communicate all these things you're communicating with Sage is eliciting things, and then Sage is communicating with your therapist. She now knows. She didn't have to ask. I mean, it's true. Like every therapist I've ever been to for Jimini was, you spend the first half of the session like, how was your week?
Right.
Or how you been?
Right.
And it's not idle chit chat, because the whole point is like, okay. And that's when you bring up the stressful situation that happened, or I've been sleeping really poorly, even though I don't think I've been feeling anxious, but yet at night I can't fall, whatever. Now she knows, and you can get right into it.
That's right. In the old world, pre-Jimini, every therapist that I've ever worked with has a way to structure when I am taking notes or when I am logging things or conversations or events in my life. They provide structured, kind of scientifically backed, CBT related toolkits. So they'll say, here's a form, or here's a worksheet, or it's great that you're motivated to take these notes and to bring them in. Wonderful. Why don't you use this structure? Because science tells us that this works, right? Now, what you guys are doing, I think, is incredibly powerful, which is that is built into a conversational tool.
Right.
And so I used to sort of have a lot of overhead to manage, right? Which form do I use?
You may not have the form with you when the thing happens. I mean, that's
always, never. Exactly.
It's a funny thing. I bring this up a lot. Like Jimini is enabled, obviously, by LLMs and the extraordinary things happening with AI. It's also enabled by mobile phones, right? Like, don't kid yourself. Like, you couldn't do this if you didn't have the mobile phone with you all the time and there to act as the recording device. And I think over time we'll see how multimodal we want to be. This will depend on what patients want, but there may be the opportunity to simply speak to Jimini or even talk to Jimini face to face if we manage to cross the uncanny valley. I don't know, but even just with text, the fact that you can do it in the moment is really important also.
Yeah, and I would set up tools. I would set up Google Forms. I would convert tools or PDFs that the clinicians would give me into tools that I could log even from my phone or whatever. It's just not the same. Like,
also, I don't think that's typical.
It might not be typical. It might not be typical. But again, I was trying to save time and money. And I knew that, oh my goodness, I've tried to use this form. It's not working. So what's the alternative? I try to build some way out of this, right?
Yeah.
But it's just not the same. Like having the confidence that there is a conversational surface that encapsulates the tools that my therapist wants me and encourages me to use, right? It's a single interface that all it requires is natural language and a little bit of my time. This is incredibly freeing, and it's going to increase my input. It's going to increase what I can input, what I can bring to the table when we meet. And again, I think because it's a dialogue, instead of me trying to tell her what I think happened, right? She can actually see sort of what happened in the moment and actually see my attempt to sort of use some of the tools and whether I'm succeeding or failing, etc.
Well, we have millions of years of evolutionary history that turned us into conversational creatures, right? We talk about this. I mean, internally we talk about like discursive turns, fancy word for like, I said something, Sage said something. But like, that's what we're used to, as opposed to, I'm going to sit down with a blank piece of paper. And one way to say, I always think about this is for me, and I think for most people, editing is easier than writing, if this makes any sense. And doing a Q&A is easier than just like, produce an essay, man. Like, and so that's, again, that Sage can help elicit this. And of course, over time, as the technology gets better and Sage remembers more and more about you and understands context, and will hopefully bring even more nuance to this in the same way that a really good human would, where like they know you're in a mood to joke about the Warriors' loss, or they know that you're not in a mood to talk about that and you want to get straight to it and talk about the thing that bothered you last week, et cetera. And that will take time, of course, but I think we'll get there.
The other advantage, aside from like the convenience and increasing the amount of inputs and making my ability in my life easier to bring all the right stuff and to capture all the right stuff to make progress with my therapist, I want to come back to the point that we already discussed, which is it does feel easier, even though I know everything that I'm chatting about the whole purpose of it is for my therapist to see it. There is a sort of psychological trick that I think we're taking advantage of to better the health of patients, which is that it can feel a little easier and more comfortable and a little more shame-free to chat with a machine. And I don't think we know why, but it's been there since the 1960s. This observation has been there. And even if you know that there's a third party, right, and that's the whole purpose of it anyway, there is something to that. One of the metaphors that came to my mind as we were talking was, are you a Star Trek fan, The Next Generation?
Enough that if you drop the Kobayashi Maru.
Well, yeah, just like Brent Spiner as Data, right? Right. The one of the best characters probably in science fiction. Sometimes it feels like it would be easier to chat with Data than it might be with a Captain Picard about your problems, right? Data sort of has this curiosity about humans.
Yeah.
Help me understand that, or why were you upset, or why is this upsetting to most people, or whatever.
Sometimes the dispassionate view actually can be really useful for you to start to, why do I care so much?
Yes.
I'm not a rational creature, am I? and actually that's sort of partially at the heart of understanding the difference between a thought and an emotion and a behavior, and that a thought is just a thought. And anyways.
Yep. Well, this is what's fascinating, is that now we have a new point of view. So instead of reviewing my own bullet points, if I had you can picture me with a notebook and bullet points, or a PDF with bullet points, or a text document with bullet points. Now I'm watching my own conversations. And I have some distance from myself, which is freeing. Right.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And that's new to me.
Yeah.
And I do think it's one of the goals of
you bring up a really interesting point, which is about the sort of comfort in talking to an AI. And we don't have enough patients yet. We don't have tens of thousands of patients where we would have data to say, oh, here's how everyone feels, and we could break it down by demographic. My prior on this is that there will be a generational thing, that particularly for the sort of the younger someone is, the more of a digital native they are, probably the more comfortable they are. Although you make the point that people would chat with Eliza back in the 60s when no one was digital native was not a thing, clearly. But I'll be really curious to see what that looks like for more and more patients. You're not the first person I've heard say I am sometimes more comfortable talking to the machine. I think that's hopefully we'll be able to build something that is flexible and accounts for the fact that, of course, different people are going to react to these things differently and have greater and lesser comfort with what they say to the machine versus what they're saying to the human. But I think that will be a really interesting area of learning for us over the next few years. So I'm curious, you've stuck with this for more than a year, which is phenomenal for us. And we're thrilled with that. And as you know, this is an industry that really struggles with churn. And for the people running the businesses, churn is terrible. But more importantly, every time a patient churns off of a service, and I'm not talking about somebody like, I got 15 sessions, I feel great, I actually don't need to see anybody anymore. Fantastic. But people like churning sometimes after 1, 2, 3 sessions where they just didn't groove with their therapist, or the service didn't work. And I actually think that a lot of this is around the practicalities of the delivery of therapy. Talk me through, why, you've given some examples of the things that you think are great. I mean, is this also more convenient for you? This is, tell me about why you're sticking around.
Yeah, it's not just one thing. I think it's all the things that come together. Convenience is a big part of it, right? So like I said, I can push these high value inputs to my therapist whenever and wherever I am.
Yep.
Right. I'm not pulling out documents. I'm not trying to find PDFs. I'm not picking up a Google form to walk me through the steps that I need to log something that I want to talk about later on. Also, just the whole telehealth thing, I'm a fan of. So not driving to an office.
It's incredible.
Music lessons have this in common with therapy. You sort of become accustomed to driving to a sort of seedy part of town or some dingy office somewhere.
Nobody can afford an office in it.
Yeah, they're trying to save on the overhead, So not that I mind. I mean, I'm a big fan of in-person therapy as well, but trying to get stuff done, living a startup life, being a new parent, being a new father, having aging parents, there's a lot of pressures that come together in your 30s. And adding another trip, another set of commutes to my schedule could be devastating. It could be really bad.
Yeah. as someone involved with startups and also small children, like where are you going to find another hour in the week? Or, I mean, it's going to come from somewhere. And like, I don't want it to come from like seeing my kids. Right. So it's, it's, I think the telehealth piece alone is really important.
And then you alluded to this earlier, Mark, the idea that therapy is present in some meaningful way every day of my life is a game changer for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm more accustomed to either a weekly or biweekly cadence. I see this person. I sort of nominally know them, even though we never talk about their life. It's a weird, imagine you couldn't learn, like you said it perfectly. You couldn't learn the guitar if that was how
I can't learn Spanish with one hour lesson a week. Yeah.
It's better than nothing. Don't get me wrong. You'll be better at the guitar if you do it one lesson a week.
Sure.
But most parents know if the practice doesn't happen.
I'm having this conversation right now with my 9-year-old who's been taking piano lessons. He hasn't been doing a whole lot of practice in between. Well, she's like, I like the lessons, Dad. Okay.
Well, I wanted, when I was 11, I wanted to quit the piano. And we had my mother's sister living with us at the time. She was getting older. She needed some care. My mother volunteered. And my mother's sister was ailing, and she was walking with a walker. She couldn't do much, but one thing that she could do was sit down with me at the piano and force me to practice every day. And as an 11-year-old boy, I hated this. And I wanted to leave the piano. And she forced me through it. And I am so grateful that she did.
Right.
Like, even to this day, I'm grateful for that experience because I hit a certain age, maybe call it 15 or something, and I loved music, and I benefited from her discipline to force me to do it.
And having a skill, there's nothing like having a skill. It turns out it's one that's like everybody loves too, and make it popular, and is really super. I mean, music is sort of magical, and it checks so many different boxes. But
so I'm not comparing Jiminy to a cranky aunt forcing you to do something, but I do want to say that it's important, right? If you're serious about growth, and if you're serious about addressing issues that you want to address, having some kind of meaningful presence of therapy in your day to day, that's not just you writing down some bullet points in a notebook somewhere or in your computer, it makes a big difference. And that's another delta. That's another change that I've noticed with this platform.
Amazing. Jon, I thank you like so much for sharing all of this. And, we haven't talked about it at all, but among many other things, of course, I'm optimistic that like this stigmatization of mental and behavioral health and challenges with anxiety, depression, like basically living our lives, fortunately is not what it used to be, but there's still challenges out there. And so I also applaud you for talking about this publicly, and it's really much appreciated. And of course, I also, as you discussed today, know how busy you are. So very, very much appreciate the time. Let me leave you one last question here. Anything, and we just talked about how important it was to do things, but anything that you've read or listened to, like podcast you've listened to, show you watched, book you've read, etc., that you think would be really interesting for people who are interested in this sort of intersection of AI, mental behavioral health, that you think, and this could be, an Asimov novel, it could be a podcast. Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to start with this one. This is going to come out of left field.
Cool.
Okay. There's a really great book. It's called I Am Not Sick, I Don't Need Help. It's by a doctor named Xavier Amador. So I picked up this book when I was struggling to understand the effects of very serious mental health problems in my extended family. I'm familiar with people in my extended family who have gone through psychosis, who have lost touch with reality, who have had inexplicable mood swings that make them a danger to themselves for a temporary amount of time, for a short amount of time. When you're in the room and when you witness this for the first time in your life, it can be very jarring.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do. And I've also, for what it's worth, this isn't just my own experience. I've had friends who know that I've gone through some of these things who have called me, and I can hear it in their voice that they're calling me, and I can hear this tension in their voice. Like, someone I love is going through an episode and I don't know what to do, Jon. You mentioned that you've had some contact with this. What do I do? And I can tell that they're really freaked out. And it takes me back to that place. So why am I bringing up this book? This book, I had already been doing years of therapy by the time I picked up this book, but it did open my eyes to another level of mental health issues that I had never thought about. And it made me think about my own like journey in therapy very differently. So it's a book about, a lot of the book is about a condition, or you might know the clinical term for this. It's not a condition, but it's called anosognosia.
Okay.
It's the specific delusion that you are not sick. So I guess you can have many different types of delusions. You know, there's paranoid delusions. There's other types of delusions. Grandiosity is another one. But there's another specific delusion that one's own self is not sick, right? Which creates challenges for clinicians, right?
Indeed.
Can you imagine? So when I read this book, I felt that the veil had been lifted, and suddenly I had become mental health conscious in a way that I wasn't before. So if you want to, I recommend it to everyone, because I felt that there was Jon before he read this book and Jon after he read this book. And
amazing. I mean, there's not, I mean, I've read a lot of books in my life. There are a handful that I feel that way. Like, this book was so important and changed my life. I love that. And I will put that on my Kindle tonight. Cool. Thank you so much, Jon. This was fascinating and super interesting. And I hope to continue the conversation maybe a year from now, if things are still working with Jimini, et cetera. We'll check back in. And in the meantime, good luck with all the other things in your life, and small children and running a startup and all the rest of it. And thank you again.
It's my pleasure, Mark. I'd be happy to chat with you anytime. It's always such a treat to get to catch up with you. And I just want to say thank you. I'm really, really excited about Jimini. I plan to stay here.
Fantastic.
And love to chat again.
Thanks so much.